Having lost political power and become a provincial city controlled by a barbarian kingdom, Rome was able to hold on to religious leadership and fought desperately for supremacy among the patriarchates, defending itself against the Eastern emperor's influence on intra-church politics. While the Osgoths were overrunning Italy, hidden but perhaps even more dangerous forces attempted to subordinate the spiritual life of Rome to Constantinople. Pope Felix III, who had died, was succeeded on the same day by his faithful counselor Gelasius I, and this election took place without any ambassadors from the king. Theodoric was too busy carrying on the war for the possession of Italy with Odoacer, and was not yet much interested in the spiritual life of his country. Pope Gelasius fully supported the irreconcilable struggle against conciliarism in the East. The Enoticon by which the Emperor Zeno hoped to pacify the Monophysites was unacceptable to the champions of the pure faith, and the abdication which the Romans had imposed on the Eastern bishops who had signed this edict continued to operate. All the sacraments were not recognized, even people who had been baptized in those years in the East, which of course introduced great problems into the relations between Rome and Constantinople. The stubborn Gelasius ruled for 2 years, after which he died, and was replaced in office by Anastasius II. A couple more important words about Pope Gelasius. Records of his discourse on the Lupercalia, still celebrated in Rome in those years, have been preserved. From his angry sermon we learn that the Roman aristocracy stubbornly kept the traditions of their ancestors, and paganism sat so deep that even the consuls of the time, following the memories of ancient customs, kept sacred chickens, studied auguries, and observed many other prescriptions of ancient religions. Apparently Gelasius managed to convince the Senate to abolish one of the last vestiges of paganism, but instead of it appeared the celebration of the purification of the Lord. The processions with burning candles reminded us of pagan customs, but it was better than that. Anastasius II tried to reconcile with Constantinople. Continuing to call Acacius a schismatic, he sent embassies to negotiate, and began to recognize the sacraments celebrated in Byzantine churches. Constantinople did not make concessions, and the Italian priests did not forgive Anastasius's search for compromise, and as a result, our hero is not included in the martyrologies and became the second non-canonized pope in the history of Rome. The pope died, but the cause of Anastasius did not disappear. He sowed the seeds of doubt, and in Rome under him the party of reconciliation with the Bishop of Constantinople was strengthened. After the death of Anastasius, a new pope, Symmachus, a former pagan from Sardinia, from the common people who served under Anastasius as archdeacon, was elected in St. Peter's Church. By the way, archdeacons directly under the pope were called cardinals. Evil tongues assert that Symmachus has reached the post, having distributed somewhere 400 solidi on influential people, guaranteeing the election. At about the same time, Senator Festus returned from Constantinople and successfully concluded negotiations on the official recognition of Theodoric as king, and at the same time negotiated the recognition of the Eastern Edict of the Enoticon. Festus believed that the edict was a symbol of universal reconciliation under imperial rule, and having distributed gold brought with him from Byzantium on the day of Symmach's election, the supporters of reconciliation with the East elected their own pope, Laurentius. The split between the popes was among the clergy, the people, and the Senate. Bloody clashes broke out in the streets, blood was shed, and both parties were forced to appeal to the secular authorities. Theodoric, still busy with the war, did not go into the details of the case and ordered to recognize the pope who was chosen by the largest number of people. Symmachus was unequivocally recognized as such. In the 499th year, Pope Symmach gathered a council which decided how to prevent the repetition of such an event in the future. We will talk more about this council in the next video, but now it is important to know that Laurentius participated in the discussion and was even granted as Bishop of Nucria, a rich city in Campania. Meanwhile, Senator Festus had prepared a new set of charges against Symmachus. Theodoric was informed that Symmachus had celebrated Easter on the wrong day, and he summoned the Pope for an explanation. But when Symmachus arrived in Rimini, ready to explain himself, he was suddenly presented with additional charges of stealing church property and fornication. The ground shook under the feet of the poor pope. He realized that he was not playing by the rules and preferred to flee at night with his friend. Such behavior was considered a confession of guilt, and the new pope was appointed a conciliator with Byzantium, Laurentius. But here it has appeared that instructions of King Theodoric in Rome are not carried out. Laurentius, delivered to Rome by his supporters, simply was not allowed in many churches, so Theodoric has charged the cathedral, which still worked to solve at last a question with popes and their elections. It didn't work out. The temporary president of the council could not get the bishops to agree with each other. The supporters of Laurentius were fewer, but they were active, and several supporters of Symmachus were even killed, and the council tearfully asked Theodoric not to torture people, to let them go and finally decide everything by royal. Theodoric, a great man, said he would lock up the council and not let them out until he made a decision. Finally, Symmachus's supporters won. It was decided that since the Pope is the heir of St. Peter, he is not subject to the king's jurisdiction, and therefore complaints against Symmachus to Theodoric are illegitimate. The case was heading towards the dogma of the infallibility of the Pope, but it was still 1,400 years away. So Symmachus was officially approved by the Pope, but Rome, with the support of a powerful senator, for another 4 years was ruled by Laurentius, by rights and wrongs refusing to surrender the Church to his opponent. The decisions of the Synod reaffirmed that the election of the Pope should take place in the presence of delegates from the king, thus preventing several elections in different places. And for the first time the office of Pope was officially named in the papers. There would be many more disputes and difficult decisions, intrigues and different interpretations of the law. But already now the election of the Pope was developing a system of rules designed to prevent the institution of the papacy from collapsing under the pressure of external or internal forces. The Vatican, it must be said, has overcome a great many crises and is worthy of at least a modicum of respect. We will study this document some more and talk about related topics in the continuation of our story.